before this episode, if you want to see the words as well as hear them, get exclusive content, access to the regular episodes before anyone else, and take part in the monthly questions and comments edition, you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and get all of that for the price of a very average coffee a month. Okay, let's get on with it. Just imagine for a moment that you're speaking in court. You're convinced you've been wrongly convicted of a hideous crime. So what would your feeling be? Anger? Revulsion? Maybe you'd be scared? Or disappointed?
Sir, is there anything you wish to say at this time before sentence is imposed?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm greatly disappointed in the legal system. I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit.
Oh, greatly disappointed. That's Brendan Banfield speaking ahead of his sentencing for the murder of his wife Christine and his fall guy Joseph Ryan. And it's one of the most bizarre court statements I've ever heard. If you're a regular here, you still will not have heard anything quite like this. And if you're new here, you're going to learn a lot about how people use words. So let's get into his words to see what he's truly saying. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I have studied the words of thousands of criminals, so I can show you how people use words to lie, to cheat, and to manipulate, and what the truth sounds like too. So Brendan was found guilty of killing his wife Christine, and the guy he set up to take the fall for this, Joseph Ryan. I've done some other episodes on evidence given in the trial if you're interested in them. Now, on the day of his sentencing, he spoke on his own behalf. To say what? Well, it's very, very strange. When you hear it, you'll be going, what? Why? What is he doing? So let's find out. One thing I will say in this is it's not just about what he says. Also listen out for what's missing. What would you expect someone to say at their sentencing for a double murder that Brendan, just does not say? Let's have a listen to the start of the exchange.
Sir, is there anything you wish to say at this time before sentence is imposed?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm greatly disappointed in the legal system. The system has failed not only me, but also Christine, my daughter Valerie, the Bensons, and the rest of my family. I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit, but it's actually impossible to have committed the crime, as the prosecution, their experts, and their witnesses have presented. The prosecution and their witnesses' statements do not match the evidence. My rights to defend my family has been taken away, to defend my home and myself. This is a protected right that I'm sure everyone listening here knows they have. My right has been discarded. I'm being sentenced on an impossible set of circumstances. The prosecution's catfish theory was forced on detectives. Detectives did not agree with the catfish theory and were harassed, belittled, and then transferred out of their department unwillingly. 3 different digital forensic experts agreed there was no catfish. This includes Fairfax Detective Miller, their expert.
So he starts off there being asked, is there anything you wish to say at this time before sentence is imposed? And this is the most bizarre choice of a response to that question that I've ever heard. He says, yes. Okay, says the judge, on you go. And he says, I'm greatly disappointed in the legal system. So just want you to know, the very first thing that he talks about is himself. There's victims here, but he doesn't mention them first at all. I'm greatly disappointed in the legal system. And that word disappointed is like, I am disappointed. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, disappointment is something that happens to us every day. He does try and strengthen it by saying he's greatly disappointed. Oh, wow, you're greatly disappointed in the legal system. I don't think he is disappointed in the legal system. I think, very much like a parent, he's disappointed in himself. Why? I think he thought he had staged and committed the perfect crime, and that he does not believe that this has been seen through. He thinks that actually all the evidence there, as he has staged and arranged for it to show, is that he should have been found not guilty. How can anyone fall for this story? Because I'm so smart, I created the perfect crime. And I'll take you through his words and show you why I think that is. More things come out as he talks. He says, the system has failed not only me, but also Christine, my daughter Valerie, the Bensons, and the rest of my family. Now, I quite often say everything that comes after the but is more important. I think this but is doing something slightly different here. What it's showing for me is that he has two sides to this. Me, the first person he mentions, again, because actually there's been no justice for Christine, in his words, if he's been wrongly convicted here. The daughter has also had no justice for her mom's murder, the Bensons, and the rest of my family. And he's setting himself apart from that. The system has failed not only me, but also these other people. He's a part in this. He's a sort of loner. And we see that as we go through. His connection with people is very, very scant. And also mention of one of the victims there, Christine, but no mention of the other victim there, Joseph Ryan. He sets himself apart from the others. And then he says, and this is his typical speech pattern, I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit. So there's no actors in what he's saying, no people doing the things. I was found guilty. A jury found you guilty, but he doesn't want to acknowledge other people making things happen. Hardly ever when you look at what he's saying. I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit. He's downplaying the severity of the crime. You're found guilty of double murder, but he's just downplayed it there to a crime. In fact, it's a cliche that he's saying. And when people say cliches, it's because they've got nothing better, more original within themselves to say. I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit. Now, I think he believes that, right? I really think he believes that. I don't think for a second he thinks he's not a killer. Don't get me wrong. I just think that he thinks the crime, using the evidence that was presented in court, is not quite exactly as it went down in his head. There's a lot more to it. Therefore, he doesn't think that the evidence presented is truthful. Therefore, that's how he can say and believe I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit. Because you'll notice, he doesn't say he didn't do the crime. He just says it was a crime that I did not commit. It's not a denial. It's not an emphatic denial. Then he says, it is actually impossible to have committed the crime as the prosecution, their experts, and their witnesses have presented. Now, interesting, this is what I mean about, I think he knows that some of the evidence wasn't quite what happened. Maybe some of the theories weren't quite right about what happened. But in general, they got the right person. But because he knows these picky little details, he can say, it's actually impossible to have committed the crime as the prosecution, their experts, and witnesses have presented. But he doesn't say, it's impossible that I carried out the crime. Doesn't say that at all. He tries to strengthen his words as well. It's actually impossible. It's not just impossible, it's actually impossible. Doesn't change the meaning, just he's trying to turn the severity and the persuasiveness up by saying actually impossible. Interesting, he refers to it as the crime. Again, is that downplaying? It could be downplaying. Or he's referring to a specific instance, which is the crime. And he's aware there is the crime. I mean, obviously, 2 people were killed. There is a crime, but he talks about the crime. So here, he's downplaying murder to just crime, and he doesn't actually deny it. Straight, outright, emphatic, he doesn't. It's all very qualified. He carries on to say, the prosecution and their witnesses' statements do not match evidence. Again, this is this thing where he's like, these things don't match, therefore, neither of them can be true, which is logically rubbish. But he, again, as he goes through this, he thinks if people contradict each other or say slightly different things about events or what they witnessed, then the whole thing must not be true. My rights to defend my family has been taken away, to defend my home and myself. This is a protected right that I'm sure everyone listening here knows they have. And one of the things here is, I'm going, who is this for? Who is he talking for here? He's been found guilty. He can't retry this in his statement here. So why is he saying all of this? And I think that phrase, everyone listening, that he's got an audience in mind. Is it in court because he says everyone listening here? Or is it the more general, everyone listening, that this is a message for someone who will be listening to this? My rights has been discarded. I'm being sentenced on an impossible set of circumstances. There we go again. It's like, he feels that something in the evidence wasn't quite right. Therefore, I must be innocent. And, actually, the perfect crime that I perpetrated wasn't represented entirely accurately in court. Therefore, I must be found innocent. The prosecution's catfish theory was forced on detectives. Once again, no actor. The prosecution's catfish theory was forced on detectives. By who? He doesn't say. It's just very passive. And that's because I believe, he doesn't really believe this. He just wants to get it out there, to get the idea out there that the catfish theory was forced on detectives, but he's got no one doing the forces. He's got no one against him. He's got no villain in this story. The villain in this story is Brendan, I must remind you. He then says, detectives did not agree with the catfish theory and were harassed, belittled, and then transferred out of their department unwillingly. 3 different digital forensic experts agreed there was no catfish. This includes Fairfax Detective Miller, their expert. That sounds something, but you'll notice he doesn't finish off the thought. Why did they get transferred? Why were they harassed, belittled and transferred? He doesn't say. He doesn't specifically say detectives that did not agree with the catfish theory were harassed, belittled and transferred for not going along with the party line or for not going along with the catfish theory. He does not say that at all. And now we've seen at the very beginning, he was very general. A crime I did not commit. The witness is just all doesn't add up. I was denied my rights. And very quickly, he's gone very, very specific, starting with this catfish theory. He gets more specific here.
This is a quote from his report. The event spanned over a 46-day period from 1/9/23 to 2/24/23. There's no indication that Christine lost control of her devices during that time. Christine is also active with these related specificialities to her during and around the relevant times. Christine also has a pattern of being active on her devices during the relevant times over the year leading up to the period. This will include consistent email and browser activity between the hours of 2300 and 100 hours. Although the not detailed, sorry. Detective Miller's report was sent for independent review to the University of Alabama for peer review. This is a best practice declared for digital forensics. Holly Kennedy of the University of Alabama agreed with Detective Miller's process and finding that there was no loss of device, no loss of dominion and control during this time.
He gets very stuttery there. There's a pause, which we'll talk about as well. Now, when people are stuttering, quite often that's because they're nervous, they are under pressure. I could understand that that could be the case here with him being in court and talking for his life, basically. Also, we stutter when we don't believe what we're saying, when we're just really nervous about joining ourselves or saying a lie or saying something outright wrong. And maybe as we'll go through, we'll try and see some of the places where he stutters. The other thing that I think could be happening here is bad eyesight and that he can't read the writing on the table in front of him. So he goes to quote from the report from the digital forensic expert. I won't go into all the detail again because it's kind of mind-numbing, but there are things like talking about an event spanning a 46-day period. There's no indication Christine lost control of her devices during that time. No indication is not the same thing as she did always have control of her devices. Just there's no indication of it. Also, some things around Christine having a pattern of being active on those devices for over a year. That means absolutely nothing there at all. And then it starts to stutter. This will include consistent email and browser activity between the hours of 2300 and 100 hours. Although they're not detailed, sorry, and we have almost a 20-second pause there while he gets himself together. Very sort of cool under pressure to pause for 20 seconds and say nothing, not to stutter, to stammer. He says sorry, but then he doesn't keep going, oh, sorry, or give me a minute or anything like that. And then we have just more kind of mind-numbing detail. Detective Miller's report was sent for independent peer review. This is a best practice. Holly Kennedy of the University of Alabama agreed with Detective Miller's process in finding that there was no loss of device, no loss of dominion and control during this time. What is he hoping to achieve here? I really do not know what the guy wants to get here. It's like he's rehashing the evidence, but he's already been found guilty. I think he just wants to talk and be almost proud of this crime that he has put together, that actually the digital evidence worked, for as far as this was concerned, the way that he wanted it to. It was just other stuff that got him in trouble. He kind of almost wants to say, here's the brilliant plan I put together. I can't believe I was found guilty on the back of all this evidence. He carries on.
When Juliana was questioned about the details of the case, she was unable to verify or remember the information. Juliana did not know the password to Christine's phone, the laptop, the email account, the Telegram, or the FetLife accounts. She did not even know the name of the email account. How could she have accessed it without any of that information? Juliana claimed that she wrote messages but could not identify a single message that she wrote. Juliana said that the Gmail was created on the laptop when it was created on the phone, then said that I deleted the two-factor authentication, which was never deleted, never hidden, and was still there. The Telegram application was also not hidden, always available on Christine's laptop. It was never uninstalled and reinstalled and was always available. When Juliana was questioned about the email account, this is her quote: "I was not the one logging in. It was Brendan who accessed the email. The question was then restated and resent and said again," and this is her second quote: "I was not the one logging in. The email account was accessed approximately 10 times while I was not home. This includes when I was in Maryland at FLETC, a secure government facility that required an appointment and ID verification to enter. If Juliana did not enter these email accounts, but they were still logged in, there's only one other person that could access these accounts, and that is Christine."
Have you spotted anything missing yet in what he's saying? We get just more of this detail from him. He talks about Juliana, who was the au pair of the couple and his co-conspirator in this murder. So potentially not the most credible of people to quote about what they said. So again, he just talks about Juliana being unable to verify, remember information. Juliana did not know the password to all these accounts. She did not even know the name of the email account. And then he asks a question: how could she have accessed it without any of that information? Now, he does that stutter or restart thing there. And I think sometimes that is when he's asking or stating something that's a little bit deceptive. And it's a question. He's not actually making a statement there. He's not saying she could not have accessed any of those accounts without any of that information. He asks a question, which is a lot weaker than making a statement. How could she have accessed it without any of that information? Now, I'm no digital forensic expert, but I know that if I pick up someone's phone, I can access their texts, their emails, all sorts of information about them without knowing their passwords. Then he says, Juliana claims she wrote the messages, but could not identify a single message that he wrote. Again, this feels like he knows they got a small point of the theory wrong, and he is going to hammer on that, a very small point, and the whole thing and all the days of testimony and evidence that was presented to court. It feels like he knows a small thing they got wrong. He bangs this drum anymore. Juliana said the Gmail was created on the laptop when it was created on the phone. People get things wrong all the time. I don't think it's the zinger that you think it is. Then said that it was that I deleted the two-factor authentication, which was never deleted and never hidden, was still there. The Telegram application was also not hidden, always available on Christine's laptop. How do you know that? It was never uninstalled and reinstalled and was always available. You'll just notice he's led with some really small details on the crime, and not about the crime itself, but on the setup to the crime. The big thing that he's been convicted of is physically killing two people. And he's not dealing with that at all. He's not led with the most shocking, the most horrible thing, the thing that if he was innocent, he should really feel the most viscerally about. He doesn't do that at all. He's into like the details of two-factor authentication and passwords and installations and reinstallations of apps. When Juliana was questioned about the email account, this is her quote, and he loves giving a quote from the testimony or the evidence. "I was not the one logging in. It was Brendan who accessed the email. The question was then restated and resent, and she said again," and this is her second quote, "I was not the one logging in." Thanks for that, so illuminating. He then goes on to say, "The email account was accessed approximately 10 times while I was not at home. This includes when I was in Maryland at FLETC, a secure government facility that required a prox, that required an appointment and an ID verification to enter." Listen, this is big nothing. We all access email accounts away from home. This can really simply be done. If there is a reason why he's saying this, if there's a really good solid reason why he's saying this, he's not finishing the thought. He's not finishing the thought that the email could not be accessed by me when I was not at home because, but he's not doing the because part of it. He's just throwing things out there. But really, they don't back up. The exact same thing. He makes it sound like FLETC, a secure government facility that required an appointment and ID verification to enter. But he doesn't say, and your devices were taken from you, so I couldn't possibly have sent an email at that point. He doesn't finish it off. It might sound impressive, but when you inspect the words, you can see that he's not finishing off the thought. He wants to convey he couldn't have accessed the account because he was away from home or because he was in a secure facility, but he doesn't explicitly say that in his words. Then he says, if Juliana did not enter these email accounts, and it's just an if there. He doesn't say Juliana could not have done this or did not do this. It's just an if. If Juliana did not enter these email accounts, but they were still logged in, there's only one other person that could access these accounts, and that is Christine. And that, Brendan, is victim blaming. Let's hear some more from the guy.
There are also 2 instances where neither Juliana or I were home with the logins. This includes the morning of 2/24, when I had left for work and was seen on video at McDonald's, and Juliana had left the house. Her movements were tracked and verified by GPS. Her phone logged that she was parked in the cul-de-sac, and her Apple Watch had logged her steps leaving the home. And by her own testimony, she also stated that she had left the home. Yet after that, the laptop was then logged in and accessed again. There is no dispute that Joe Ryan brought the knife to my home. My DNA and fingerprints are not on the knife. Joe Ryan's DNA is on the knife, right at the junction of the handle and the blade. The DNA is right where you would expect it to be for someone who is forcefully using the knife. This is further verified by the injury that is on Joe's thumb in his hand. The medical examiner verified the injury on Joe's thumb could be caused by the knife. There are no injuries to my hands, nothing to indicate I ever held the knife. Joe's DNA is also under Joe Ryan's fingernails. Joe's DNA is also under Christine's fingernails, indicating that she tried to fight him off. Joe Ryan's hands have a mixture of Joe's and Christine's DNA. When he got back up and struck me in the back, it was transferred to the back of my jacket. Juliana's original statement on 2/24 stated that I never touched Joe. She repeated this in both of her proffers and at trial. The prosecution has repeatedly said that I manipulated the scene and moved Joe Ryan. I never left Christine's side. I only tried to render aid to her.
So there are 2 instances where neither Juliana or I were home with the logins. Now, a moment ago he said Juliana didn't have the logins, but there he seems to be saying that Juliana did have the logins because neither Juliana or I were home with the logins. So when he says that neither Juliana or I were home with the logins, it sounds like Juliana could have been home with the logins. If he wasn't there, Juliana still could have been there with the logins. So it's just not hanging together for you, Brendan, is it now? It's starting to fall apart. I think Juliana did have the logins, but a minute ago she didn't, and now she could in his words there, possibly be home with the logins, but she wasn't home with the logins because he tells her that because he tells us that she was out, and they were out on the morning of 2/24. He'd left for work and was seen on video at McDonald's, which it feels to me like, was that part of the plan? Right. So in order to make this all work, I'm going to have to be seen on McDonald's. They've got CCTV, so that means that will give me some sort of alibi for something. Juliana had left the house. Her movements were tracked and verified by GPS. Her phone logged that she was parked in the cul-de-sac, and her Apple Watch logged her steps leaving home. And then he says, and by her own testimony, she also stated that she had left the home. And he wants us to believe Juliana's testimony, right? It's really important. He wants us to believe Juliana's answers, that she didn't know the emails, that she, didn't know any of these stuff. And also believe this testimony that she'd left home. Just remember that for something that's coming later. And he carries on. Yet after that, the laptop was then logged in and accessed again. Now, here we go with this passiveness again. There's no actor there. The laptop was then logged in and accessed again. He doesn't put a person in the actions there. And that could even be, if he's claiming he doesn't know who it was, after that, someone logged into the laptop and accessed again. He doesn't even put a someone in there. I know he's trying to say it was Christine, which is like kind of victim blaming, but he doesn't say that. He just leaves it as this mysterious aura that logged into the laptop and asked it again. Here he's stating timelines with some precision here, positions where he was, where Juliana was. I know more about where Juliana was today than my nearest and dearest. He's stating timelines and positions, but he's not rebutting anything. He then goes on to blame the other victim as well. There is no dispute that Joe Ryan brought the knife to my home. My DNA and fingerprints are not on the knife. Joe Ryan's DNA is on the knife, right at the junction of the handle and blade. The DNA is right where you would expect it to be for someone who was forcefully using the knife. Remember I said I feel like almost he's boasting about what he has achieved here? And in all of this, putting this crime together, did he manage to get Joe's DNA exactly where it would be expected to be? Oh, I can't believe I've got the DNA right there in that place on the knife. It's going to really look like Joe did it. I think that's what's going on. And then he gets a bit stuttery. This is further verified by the injury that is on Joe's thumb and his hand. And I think he might be doing a little bit of stuttering when he's making things up, or when it's a completely sensitive thing to him, like the injury that is on Joe's thumb and his hand. Also, I'm noticing Joe is Joseph. I don't know if he was known to his friends as Joe or Joseph, but he's referring to him in a very close term of Joe, which for someone that he's claiming killed his wife and has, then tried to attack him and so on, it's a very close term to use, this referring to him as Joe. He carries on. The medical examiner verified the injury on Joe's thumb. So we've got that on Joe's thumb twice, that stutter. The injury that is on Joe's thumb, and then the medical examiner verified the injury on Joe's thumb. So it's exactly the same stutter on exactly the same words on Joe's thumb. The medical examiner verified this could be caused by the knife. Only could, but he's now taking that as a certainty. But his words show the lack of certainty there, because it's could be caused by that. There are no injuries to my hands. And interestingly that he talks in the present tense there. There are no injuries to my hands. Not were no injuries to my hand in the past tense, which is what we would expect. Nothing to indicate I ever held the knife. And again, this is not, I didn't hold the knife. It's not that. It's just there's nothing to indicate it. Again, yeah, I've cleaned it and I've got Joe's DNA on it, and there's nothing to indicate I ever held the knife. I'm putting together the perfect crime here. Then he says Joe's DNA is also under Joe Ryan's fingernails. Mistake there, because he says, sorry, Joe's DNA is also under Christine's fingernails, indicating that she tried to fight him off. Indicating, again, it's not proving, it's just indicating. And I think that what he's done is he's staged all of this, thinking everything I've put together indicates the scenario that I want the police and the law enforcement to think happens. But it just didn't work for him. And so this is partly, how on earth is my great plan falling apart? And partly, here's how great the plan was. At least if I can say this, I'll know how good it was. Joe's have hands. So he makes a mix up there. Joe Ryan's hands have a mixture of Joe's and Christine's DNA. When he got back up and struck me in the back, it was transferred to the back of my jacket. That seems like he's explaining something. Damn, there's DNA in the back of my jacket. I'm going to have to explain that because we've got the same thing again. It's that stutter. When he got back up, which I think is like a really sensitive point in the story to him, is indicated by this stutter. Juliana's original statement on 224 stated, "I never touched Joe." She repeated this both again in both of her proffers and at trial. The prosecution has repeatedly said that I manipulated the scene, and this is what it sounds like to me, mate. I moved Joe Ryan. Stutter again. The prosecution have repeatedly said that I manipulated the scene and moved Joe Ryan. I think, again, another sensitive point. He says, "I never left Christine's side. I only tried to render aid to her." Number one, that word never is in there. When you hear someone say never, check it for deception. It's not always deceptive, but we use never as a big, concrete, solid word, and very often it isn't. I never left Christine's side. Well, that's not true. At some point, he did leave Christine's side. He doesn't say, "I never left Christine's side during the time that this was all occurring," or anything like that. And then he said, "I only tried to render aid to her," which a former federal investigator, maybe render aid is a very formal term for it. But there's no love, there's no care, there's no desperation there in what he wants us to think he was doing, which was trying to make sure that his beloved wife was still alive. But it's a very, very formal term. So a recap here. He's not directly rebutting the allegations that have been made about him. He's merely stating evidence presented on court, and he's spending way more time on this very, very selected evidence than just speaking about his own part in terms of what he was doing. He doesn't want to go there at all. He wants to talk about what the evidence shows rather than what he was up to. We'll go back to the episode in a moment, but if this breakdown hits home, make sure you're following or subscribe to this podcast, because what I'm doing here isn't just a one-off episode. We are building a skill, and like any talent worth having, it takes repetition. The more you hear these patterns, the more naturally you'll spot them in your actual life. I hear it from listeners so often. Eventually, you can't unhear this stuff. You'll be in a meeting or on a call, and you'll start noticing the subtext earlier than anyone else, which gives you an edge in how you respond. If you aren't ready to commit to training just yet, but you found this episode valuable, do me a quick favour. Leave a rating or share this episode. It's the best way to feed the algorithms and ensure these tools get into the ears of the people who genuinely need them. And if you want to be more careful with how you speak, to talk with more clarity, authority and confidence, then do search for my other podcast. It's available everywhere. Just search for How Words Work. Right, let's get back to the episode.
Juliana said that I poured blood on Joe. This does not match the findings of the medical examiner or the blood spatter expert, who described that these were transfers and were not as droplets. Christine obtained tickets to the zoo and sent them to Juliana. There was no prompting for this. Christine wrote the zoo on the calendar and in Juliana's schedule. Only Christine could have planned the meeting on 2/24. The meeting of Christine and Joe was confirmed over a week prior, but only Christine could have chosen 2/24 because she was scheduled to work. No one else would know that this day would be available. On 2/24, she had only requested off from work on February 23rd and had not informed anybody else that she was off until then. The Fairfax County Police Department never truly looked into Joe Ryan. No search warrant was ever conducted at Joe's residence. Only 2 women were interviewed about their relationship with Joe, and both found that they were very uncomfortable with him. Both chose not to see him again. One was so uncomfortable that she went to her therapist the next day. These are her quotes. She felt so out of place, and that it was dirty, and that he was uncomfortable towards her.
So just the victim blaming carries on. He said there, Juliana wrote, he misnames his au pair and confidant. Juliana wrote, said that I poured blood on Joe. This does not match the findings of the medical examiner or the blood spatter expert. Well, wait a minute. Just 2 minutes ago, we were supposed to believe everything Juliana said because it was, well, it worked well for you. However, when Juliana is saying things that don't work well for you, then we should not believe her. We should not believe her. This does not match the findings of the medical examiner or the blood spatter expert who described that those were transfers and were not as droplets. And we have that repeat stutter again. And we're not as droplets. I think that's the points that are really significant to him. He says Chris was. Christine obtained tickets to the zoo and sent them to Juliana. There was no prompting for this. There was, again, no actor, no one prompted her. You know, there is no person acting in any of this whatsoever. It's just mysterious happenings that people don't make happen in his wordings. Christine wrote the zoo on the calendar and Juliana's schedule. Only Christine could have planned the meeting on 2/24. Why? He just is not finishing any of these thoughts off. The meeting of Christine and Joe was confirmed over a week prior. Again, there's an actor missing from all of this. Who confirmed it? He is not putting people in his story. He's thinking of a story like it's process, like it's something that he has moved little post-it notes around to make, you know, here's the series of events and here's what needs to happen. There are not people inside his story. He's forgot to do that. The meeting of Christine and Joe was confirmed. He never ever says who confirmed it. Over a week prior. But only Christine could have chosen 2/24 because she was scheduled to work. Now you'll notice in these things, Christine could have done this. Christine could have chosen that date because she was scheduled to work. But he doesn't say Christine confirmed the meeting. Who confirmed it? He doesn't say. Him? No one else would know that this day would be available on 2/24, on 2/24, and we've got again that restating. So it's on 2/24. On 2/24, she had only requested off from work on February 23rd and had not informed anybody else that she was off until then. I mean, I don't know about you, but I heard that and said, miscarriage of justice. No, I didn't. I think this is just him going, here's another part of the execution that was flawless, but people looked beyond that and saw something else that really he hadn't thought of. Then he goes on to say, the Fairfax County Police Department never truly looked into Joe Ryan. Interesting. Never truly looked into Joe Ryan means they did look into Joe Ryan and found nothing there. And he's like, oh, never truly. Or maybe some of the things he hoped they would find, they didn't find, or maybe just didn't think were as important as he thought they would be. He says no search warrant was ever conducted at Joe's residence. And he's focused on the process there. Again, notice, like, what's the big thing? If you are this person, you're convinced Joe Ryan is the person that should be convicted of this and or found guilty of this or has caused this and not you, Brendan, what would the big thing be there? Would it be that his residence was never searched? Or would it be about a search warrant? Because one's about process. No search warrant was ever conducted at Joe's residence, and using residence rather than home, again, is just that more officious process-driven term. Or would you be going, they never searched Joe's house? No, he's talking about process. No search warrant was ever conducted at Joe's residence. Only 2 women were interviewed about their relationship with Joe, and both found that they were very uncomfortable with him. Both chose not to see him again. Now, he seems to have an issue because he says only 2 women were interviewed, and it's part of he was never properly investigated. So he seems to have an issue that they only spoke to 2 women. Man, I knew there was some more there. If they'd spoken to some more, then maybe they would have thought Joe was responsible for all of this. Damn. But then when these only 2 women, it's not enough, but when they are unanimous, he takes solace in it. Oh yeah, they both said the same thing, therefore it must be universally true. One was so uncomfortable that she went to her therapist the next day. These are her quotes. She felt so out of place and that it was dirty and that he was uncomfortable towards her. Now, those are not quotes. You'll notice he's given some quotes before where he's directly quoted, but someone can't, in their own quotes, say she couldn't, unless it's the therapist. I mean, yeah, I guess it could be the therapist quotes that are there, that are being shared. But anyway, they're hardly the words used to describe a violent murderer. He's trying to frame it as saying, well, this means the guy must be responsible for the death of my wife. But really, yeah, people do feel out of place all the time. People feel slightly dirty or seedy with some of the things they do, and many people feel uncomfortable in the presence of other people. It's not the damning evidence. Have you spotted anything missing yet? Pay attention.
I believe only one of Joe's friends was also interviewed. He stated that in a confrontation, Joe would choke or strangle somebody. This matches Joe's social media profile, saying that he studied neck snapping at Harvard. And to add to that, where was Christine stabbed? In the neck, which Joe seems to have a fondness for. These things are some of quotes from other people, not from me. Joe had previously also cut another woman. It's in his own messages, in his own words, that he was attracted to that.
Again, he has an issue that I believe only one of Joe's friends was also interviewed. Also, again, said with low confidence. He goes to state only one of Joe's friends was interviewed, but then he goes, I believe only one of Joe's friends was also interviewed. He stated that in a confirmation, in a confrontation, so he's correcting himself there, which again, is that something to do with the eyesight? Joe would choke or strangle somebody. And again, we don't have people that what sort of confrontation? Was he a street fighter? Was he a sports player that got really aggressive? Or, is he trying to claim that Joe Ryan was domestically abusive? He doesn't say. He's got all these ideas, but he doesn't finish the thoughts off. Why? Because he doesn't really believe them. Joe would choke or strangle somebody during a confrontation. It's not even the person he's having the confrontation with somebody. It could be anyone. This matches Joe's social media profile, saying he studied neck snapping at Harvard. Almost like Joe was the perfect patsy for this. And to add to that, where was Christine stabbed? In the neck, which Joe seems to have a fondness for, he says with some stuttering. Now, interesting there, it's only seems to have a fondness for, and again, he doesn't finish the thought off, he doesn't make any accusation at all. He's just throwing things out there. These things are some of quotes from other people, not from me. Joe had previously also cut another woman. It's in his own messages, in his own words, that he was attracted to that. Now, Brandon likes a quote, but he hasn't given us any of Joe's quotes. You'll notice that, he's telling us in his own words he was attracted to that. He's loved quoting other people, but there doesn't seem to be anything that he's got strong enough to be able to quote Joe and how much he, was attracted to the things that Brendan would like us to think he was attracted to. And for all the evidence that he just throws out there, he doesn't say outright, Joe must have done it. Not once.
Separately, there's entire internal affairs videos about this case. So either Detective Bryant or Lieutenant Giacchio is lying based on what they said at trial, because Lieutenant Giacchio denied saying that Juliana was arrested as an innocent. Meanwhile, Detective Bryant said that was brought up to him by Giacchio in his internal affairs video. Both of them are under oath. So one of them would be committing a Giglio violation. Also, Detective Nielsen stated that Juliana was arrested to get her to flip, and there was no other reason provided.
I think you might have got his pattern by now. He's trying to say, or trying to give the impression that he was fitted up by the police detectives interviewing him, because he talks about one of them is lying, one of them said this, one of them said something different. It's all in internal affairs videos. If internal affairs were involved, it must be bad. It doesn't tell us the outcome of any internal affairs investigation, though. So they're committing violations, and Detective Nielsen said this, and there was no other reason. It's just process, and he doesn't say I was fitted up. He just sticks things out there that might lead us to come to that impression, but he doesn't say it with any solid sense whatsoever. He doesn't finish the thought off. This is all, and so much of what he has said, especially about Joe Ryan, it's insinuation, it's not allegation. Finally, because we've heard all his speech so far, let's get the end of it, where he actually starts to talk about the woman he murdered, his wife, Christine.
Christine was a wonderful and loving person. Just as you heard from many of the people here, she was a loving and compassionate nurse. During COVID, she volunteered to take care of many of the people that were sick and struggling. She signed up for extra shifts. She signed up for vaccination clinics. She cared for her daughter. She enrolled her in dance lessons. She was there for recitals. I loved her very much, despite what you may think of my affairs. Our marriage worked for us. It wasn't something that I looked to end. It was told to other women that I was never going to leave Christine. That was always how it was said. Christine cared very much for her family and friends. I'm not trying to diminish in any way what her life was. She truly was a caring mother, a caring wife, a loving nurse. But I am not responsible for her death. This is not a knife that I ever held in my hand, and I never stabbed her. Thank you.
So he tries to give us almost like a character reference there for Christine. Christine was a wonderful and loving person. Just as you heard from many of the people here, she was a loving and compassionate nurse. And then he says, during COVID, she volunteered to take care of many of the people that were sick and struggling. She signed up for extra shifts. She signed up for vaccination clinics. I don't know what this indicates, but you'll notice there that he's not very direct about it. He doesn't say, during COVID, she took care of many of the people that were sick and struggling. She did extra shifts. She did vaccination clinics. It's all about Christine's intention. She volunteered to take care of many of the people that were sick. She signed up for extra shifts. She signed up for vaccination clinics. Could indicate that he had a bit of a problem with her volunteering to do all this stuff for someone that wasn't him. So it wasn't the fact she did it was the fact that she wanted to do it that really, really bugged him, could be. Then he says, and I think go back and listen to this because I think it is she cared for her daughter, but it's not very distinct. It could be she cared for our daughter. She enrolled her in dance lessons. She was there for recitals, which is, very interesting. Caring for daughter. There's a lot more to being a mother than enrolling in dance lessons, being there for recitals. But is that in some way important to him? Does it mean they were both out of the house? So therefore that he could get up to no good with the au pair? It could be that. It could be that just he has no real idea what caring for a daughter actually involves. And then he says, I loved her very much. I loved her very much. He has to put the very in there. I loved her much. But it doesn't sound that all-encompassing love there, does it at all? Just, I loved her very much. It's kind of like me talking about one of my favourite television programmes from when I was a kid. I love Scooby-Doo very much. It's got the same amount of emotion in it as that. Despite what you may think of my affairs, our marriage worked for us. This is the point where my jaw dropped. I was like, I would not be mentioning them. And he says, our marriage worked for us, both of them. It wasn't something that I looked to end. Now, that's interesting. It wasn't something that I looked to end. Was Christine thinking about ending it? That's entirely possible there because he's only talking for himself. He wasn't saying we were together forever as a couple. We were so committed to each other. There's none of that there. It's just this wasn't something I looked to end. And you'll see that this is a statement in the negative, which shows where someone's focus is. So this could have been stated in the positive. Like I said, this was something that we saw being forever. That would be in the positive, but the end part is where his focus is. So I think there was some end in his mind there. In fact, we know what that was. And not something that I looked to end. Doesn't mean that you didn't want it to end or anything like that. I looked to end could be I never went to a divorce lawyer. It was told to other women that I was never going to leave Christine. That was always how it was said. And you'll see once more, there is no person in there. It's not, this is what I told other women. I always told the other woman I was never going to leave Christine. No, it was told to other women. So I don't think this happened again. I don't think this is true because he's forgotten to put himself there. It was told to other women that I was never going to leave Christine. Again, it's not, I told other women I was always going to be with Christine or I'd always be married to Christine. That was always how it was said. Again, the person is missing from it. Christine cared very much for her family and friends. And then he says, I'm not trying to diminish in any way what her life what her life was. Now, why does he say this diminished line? Is it about the stuff earlier on? Because he didn't really say Christine was organising hookups for random guys. He didn't actually say that. And actually, he has been on the surface of it quite nice about Christine talking about her work during COVID times, talking about her being a mom to the daughter and so on. I'm not trying to diminish in any way what her life was. Again, the focus is on the negative, what he's not trying to do, which I think is really what he was trying to do. He's been nice about her, but actually he thinks he's diminishing her. And then he finishes off with what I think is supposed to be his big finish, but really whimpers out. He even stutters on it. But I am not responsible for her death. I am not responsible for her death is so indirect. I did not kill her. Would be more direct. I am not responsible for her death. This is not a knife that I have ever held in my hand, and I never stabbed her. So we've got that word never in there again. I just don't believe that. I never stabbed her. No, I did not stab her. You know, it's just I never stabbed her. Well, at any time. That's what never means. At any time, I never stabbed her. And this is not a knife I have ever held in my hand. Again, I think this is about his cunning plan to make the knife look like something he had never touched. Whether it's been in your hand or not, that's not the big point here. It's did you kill her or not? But he's focused in again on a little tiny detail. This is not a knife that I've never ever held in my hand, and I never stabbed her. Thank you. So there we go. I think he's being very boastful about what he did and all these genius little parts of the setup and the preparation that I think he doesn't think he's getting full credit for. But did you notice the things that were missing? Here's the things that were missing for me. Any sign of himself giving himself a good character reference, because this is ahead of sentencing where someone says I'm a better person or I'm not a bad person or, you know, I've got a daughter that needs looking after. There's nothing at all out there that says what a great person he is. It's all this quibbling about little bits of evidence. He's forgotten to say what a good person he is to maybe try and get some mercy from the judge. The other thing is that he doesn't speak in any good terms about their marriage or how she was towards him, how he was towards her. If you go back and listen to it, he doesn't say it was a great marriage. He just says at one point it worked for us, but he doesn't say, he talks about how great Christine was with the COVID patients, what a good mom, never, you know, how they related to each other, how she related to him, how she supported him, how she backed him, how she encouraged him, how he is, you know, desolate without her support or backing. None of that whatsoever. And also nothing about what he did for Christine at all. I know nothing about that from that. I know about his affairs, and I know what he's supposed to have told the other woman he was having affairs with, but I know nothing about the inside of that relationship whatsoever. He's decided to keep that hidden. And also, in everything there is no sense of regret about the deaths or sadness about the deaths expressed whatsoever. Whether that is selfish sadness, you know, I've lost my partner, I've lost my soulmate, there's none of that, through to my daughter's lost her mother, through to, you know, Christine's family has lost Christine. None of that whatsoever. So what's missing? Any sign of him saying, I'm a good guy. None whatsoever. It's all about these little nitpicky evidence bits. He doesn't speak about the relationship, the marriage at all in any way. He's decided to keep that hidden or not talk about it for a reason, and just no sense of sadness around the death of two people. If you want more on it, like I say, there are a couple more episodes where I've looked at some of the evidence in the trial. You can find that at neveratruerword.com. There's a whole load more episodes, especially based on court and trials, to be found there as well in podcast or video form. You'll find it all at neveratruerword.com. I'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word. And remember, the truth is always in the words.